What's going on, everybody? Carl Dukes, Mike Bell, Day, and of course, Big O. It's Dukes and Bell. We're at you at 2 o'clock today. Look, we're not going to beat around the bush because last night, if you follow us on social media, and many of you do, you saw what was going on as Mike was being critical, I don't know, but examining the fact of Bobby Cox's tenure as the manager of the Braves and talking about, of course, Brian Snitker stepping away. So let's start there, Mike, because I want you to explain how this all went down and then where we are now, because one of the all-time great Braves decided to clap back, as they say.
Yes, I've been called a clown and a gas bag by a Hall of Famer. I've also been called a hoe by an all-star. That was Trae Young. So I'm moving up the pecking order of Atlanta sports. No, yesterday we were talking about Brian Snitker's legacy as he announced that he was going to step down. And we just talked about it because, he's held at such a standard. People love him. He's like Bobby Cox light. So I guess the inevitable, in my mind, comparisons are where does his legacy stand as far as, Braves managers and most Braves fans' lifetimes. And I said that he did more with less and Bobby Cox did less with more. And I tweeted that, and that was out there for a day or two. And a couple of Braves fans, did not like that. And then I guess they got it to Chipper Jones's point of view, and Chipper clapped back last night. I didn't see it till this morning. You are without a doubt a clown, writes Chipper. Only an absolute talentless gasbag would take this opportunity to celebrate a glorious retirement by crapping on the generational GM and manager that ignited the last 35 years of baseball relevance. You can't be serious with this post. And I clapped back at Chipper and I said, hey, man, I'm sorry, I'll disagree. I think, there was just generational talent that Bobby had that Snitker did not. And I invited him to come on the show, and Day has been trying to reach out to Chipper and try to get him on the program today. He was initially scheduled to be on the Steakhouse this week, but we're going to try to get Chipper on if he'll come on the show and discuss, because I stand by the comment. And I know that Bobby Cox is in poor health, and I don't want to wish ill. I'm not speaking. We all love Bobby. We all know his legacy. But you give Snitker 3 Cy Young Award winners. You give him the talent that John Schuerholz assembled for the better part of 12 to 13 years. There was so much pitching, they couldn't even find a spot for a guy like Millwood. Or, 1 year. I mean, they had so much talent, different versions, too, from Crime Dog and the original with Ron Gant and Dave Justice to later on with guys like Sheffield. So it's not a knock on the human being. We're just talking about what happened between the white lines. And I understand Chipper's going to stand up for a guy that he loves and manage him just like Smoltz and Tom Glavine would as well, because that's their guy, and I respect that. But I stand by my comment. Snitker did more with less. He never had the kind of pitching. Hell, Carl, we had the Dodgers down 3-1 in the 2020 NLCS, and we had to do a bullpen start.
Yeah.
Okay. That's nothing that Bobby ever had to deal with. So I'm sorry if people feel at this stage you can't criticize Bobby's legacy. And I beg to differ. I think, man, whether he's in good health or he's at this stage of his life, I'm just talking about the baseball. But some people had a problem with it. And Chipper obviously did as well.
I'm gonna let Big O and Day go and talk a little bit about what they think about this. It's Dukes and Bell, guys. We're at you guys at 2 o'clock. Barbara Dooley joins us. Mike Griffith from Dawg Nation. But with Snit stepping away yesterday, this is front and center. What do you guys think? Day, you start.
I didn't take. And it's funny because when this happened last night, I was actually on the air doing Prep Sports Nation, and as I was replaying one of my interviews, I'm kind of going through the comments, and I'm like, wow, they're really going off. And I was talking to to Noel, my producer, and I was just like, you know what? When Mike said this, I didn't take it away. You know what I'm saying? I didn't take it a certain kind of way. I just thought, like, good conversation, comparing the two. I didn't take anything, as I started reading the comments, how some people were saying, well, I think Chipper's trying to say your timing is bad because of Bobby Cox's health at this time, which, okay, I was like, okay, I get that, but I didn't know that it necessarily warranted, what is it? What's your new nickname?
I'm a talentless gas bag.
Gas bag.
By the way, I was texting to my high school buddies. We have this group text about like 15 guys. Carl's met some of my buddies in Vegas. And it's like, wow, Coach Jacklin, my 11th grade varsity baseball coach, said the same thing. And 40 some odd years later, I'm being told this by a Hall of Famer.
But yeah, I didn't grasp that aspect of it. And then until kind of reading the comments, I said, okay, maybe I can get if that's what's upsetting Chipper,
right?
That it's the timing of the comments and the comparison.
You saw Bobby, Bobby at the reunion of the '95 team, and obviously his health isn't good.
Comparison is not. It wasn't a bad comparison conversation in my opinion.
Big O.
It's always tough when a manager retires or a coach, or just somebody who's in charge of a team, because their legacy is looked at in comparison to other people's legacies. So in terms of what happened yesterday with Snicker, I think it's fair to look at him in relation to Bobby. And I mean, those are the two managers that the majority of us have seen in our lifetimes here. And if you're a Braves fan, a relatively young Braves fan, I guess. Well, not even that. Let's say you're a Braves fan and you're in your mid-40s. Your sort of understanding of what these Braves teams are is from, early 90s to when it wasn't great, to those early 90s when they were great, mid-90s and so on and so on and so forth. So I don't understand why, if that's the guy, Bobby Cox, that you've seen for the majority of your fandom as a Braves fan, that you aren't allowed to be observant or, dare I use this word, critical performance. Before we did the show here, I was telling the guys, two things can be right here. Bobby Cox built a great team here. He was the GM before he was the manager. A lot of those guys that were here, that Sherholtz, that before the Sherholtz the Sherholtz era started, were because of Bobby bringing them here. And Bobby built great teams. Bobby managed great teams. Bobby was a great manager. But I mean, hell, even as a Braves fan, I wanted more. I'm not afraid to say that. I remember, 96, watching Andrew hit 2 home runs in a game in Yankee Stadium in the World Series, being the youngest player to do it at that time. I remember Mark Wohlers hanging one of Jim Leyrit's and then blowing that game. I've heard comments before from John Smoltz where he talked about if they won that one in 96, that they would have been the ones to have that dynasty going forward rather than the Yankees, because they wouldn't have traded away David Justice and tried to bring in Kenny Lofton and fix things like that. But I don't think it's unfair to look at the totality of somebody's career, because we're doing that right now with Brian Snitker. We can do that. Right. We can do it with Bobby Cox as well. Like, I don't think it's fair just to say that, because of an individual, like you're allowed to have an opinion on somebody's career and their tenure. And I think that's what Mike did there. Whether you agree with him or disagree with him, that's fine. But I don't think I don't think it was fair of Chipper to call you a talentless gas bag because you had your opinion on the totality of Bobby Cox's career.
And Carl, real quick before you jump in, I mean, like, I'm a huge Chipper fan. We always wish Chipper was even more involved with the Braves, because I think his hitting approach is sometimes so simple and so on point with some of these young players. You wish he was even more involved. And look, Chipper knows more about baseball than any of us will combined. But I just think there's a connectivity to him coming up with the show with Bobby, and that's understandable. He's looking out for his guy. But in no way am I sitting there going like Bobby Cox is a loser or Bobby Cox choked. Just talking about the resources and just talking about what got done. And you just talked about it. Smoltz has been on the show with us and talked about, Carl, if you could bookend some of those years with another World Series just to validate that amazing run, it would have made the world a difference.
Well, look, timing is everything in life. If Chipper Jones came up at a different time and didn't play with 3 Hall of Fame pitchers and didn't have a Hall of Fame manager, what's his career look like? I mean, for us, the timing is never right when we're analyzing and examining careers. When a guy says he's done, it's too early. When he's been out of the game for 5 years, well, he hadn't been out of the game long enough. Then when it's 10 years, oh, well, you know what? That was 10 years ago. Why are we even talking about this? There's never a good time. But the reality is, these are the 2 most prominent managers in the history of the Braves. And fair or unfair, as Big O said, we're going to talk about it and examine, because that's the word, fellas. We're examining this. We're not being critical. Look, there was a time to be critical of Bobby Cox when he was, in fact, managing this team. And, Mike, you didn't say it last night, but you wouldn't be the first one to say they came up short a lot with a lot of talented players. There's nothing wrong in saying that as an Atlanta Braves fan who gave blood, sweat, and tears to this organization, bought the merch, followed them around, watched them on TV. You're as invested as anybody. And I'm talking about you guys that are watching. So when you say that about your team, and we talk about the Falcons this way, we're invested. So for Chipper to jump in and give his comments, all good. And Mike's right. We love you, Chipper. If you see this, come on the show. Let's kick it. But we get a chance to examine any of you guys' careers before and beyond, or wherever the hell it is now, because that's what sports fans do. So if Mike's a gas bag, then I guess I am too, because we're going to examine it and we're going to continue to look at it. And when it's all said and done, guess what? You're going to have your opinion about who the best manager was. We're going to have our opinion about who the best manager was. But they both made Atlanta great. And I think we can all agree with that. So I'm curious, man. I hope he comes on, whether it's today, over the next few days. Not sure. I know he's out and about and busy and doing all the things that a rich baseball player does when his career is over. And I love it because I wish I was in that spot.
You're doing the same thing. Yeah,
exactly. But that's where I'm at. And we'll talk more about it today because we want to get you guys' opinion. If you have a question or thought about it, hit us up right here and we will certainly address it. All right, man.
By the way, Brian Snicker will be on the Steakhouse with Steak and Sandra on Friday on 92.
Terrific. Yep. That's terrific. Yeah. And
start the show right after 10 o'clock.
And we love Snick, man. We talked about it yesterday. And look, I think, I don't know this, Mike, but I think he's as beloved with his players as Bobby Cox was with his. Right. I really believe that. Even though he didn't manage as long as Bobby, I think the guys that played under Snit love him just as much.
Right. And Carl just touched on it. I mean, if you know who managed the Braves in 1957 and you want to talk about his legacy, or Chuck Tanner's legacy versus Joe Torre, but as Carl just touched on it, these are the guys for the majority of our audience. These are the managers for their Braves fandom. So it's a logical comparison to me. And I'm sorry because someone's of ill health, and we're all praying for Bobby. I think everyone was misty-eyed when you saw him at the 95 reunion. But I mean, to me, it's a logical conversation to have. So, and this is something, it's not like Carl, I jumped on this just yesterday. I moved here in 98. The first time I go, what the hell is Bobby Cox doing? Was the 98 NLCS, where there was over-reliance on platoons and they lost to the Padres. 99, he does a hell of a job. Javi Lopez is out. He had to deal with a lot of injuries just to get to the World Series. But when you're as good as the Braves were, to Carl's point, just with Snicker and with Bobby, you're measured by those big moments. And that's what we're talking about. So I'll leave it there. We'll get more into it today.
No doubt. No doubt. By the way, coming up, Barbara Dooley, Mike Griffith, the Dawg conversation remains front and center. Now I'm seeing things, Mike, about, and I didn't know this was a dynasty. I thought they went back to back, but I guess so. And they're saying, is the Dawg's dynasty over? First of all, what do we consider a dynasty? I think what Saban did at Alabama was a dynasty. I don't know if going back to back is a dynasty. It's an incredible feat.
Got to be at least 3 and 5.
3.
Correct.
In hockey, it's 3. Like the Panthers right now are on a run. You could argue the Canadians. That's a slam dunk dynasty. The Oilers, the Islanders. You could argue the 49ers. But again, in the NFL and baseball, it's a little bit different because it's hard enough to get 2, let alone to get 3 in a row.
So we'll discuss that. We'll ask Barbara about that.
Yeah, to your point, I don't think we're ever going to see back-to-backs anymore, Carl. You talked about it yesterday.
No, we'll ask Barbara, we'll ask Mike Griffith, and we'll ask him also about the Kentucky matchup and what he thinks the Dogs are going to do there. Blowout, by the way, what do you guys guess this weekend? Blowout?
I don't know.
Kirby's not great against the number.
Hold on.
It's a noon game, man.
I don't mean it like that. I just, it's just one of those games. It's just tricky. I mean, it's still the SEC, and certain teams still get up. I think Georgia is going to be more focused on just winning the game, not necessarily how many points they put on the board. I think they want to make sure they execute. I think that's going to be Kirby's focus. We got to execute. We got to get things done. Now, if that leads to them blowing out because the defense is shutting Kentucky down in every position they're scoring, then that's what it is. But I think they're going to be so focused on making sure that they just execute. I don't know what to expect from a score standpoint. But I do want to say this about Georgia, and I know we're talking about the dynasty thing. One of the things I was thinking about is the fact that I think people got to realize too, Kirby's been telling us this is a young Georgia team. And with that being said, assuming everyone comes back, this is a team that is very well capable of being instantly back in the mix for not just the SEC title, but a championship team. Because
they don't get hit by the portal and NIL from the schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, let me say this real quick, and then we got to get out of here, guys. Again, Dukes and Bell, follow us. Thanks for being here. Twitch Live, YouTube, all the places where you access this. This is our pre show, giving you a little behind the curtain. We're finding out right now who can really coach. Because the talent across the board is now becoming equal. And if you have a really good coach, your team is going to be successful. When all things are equal, it gets back to coaching. And I'm just telling you, in college football, that's where we're at right now. This whole thing where Alabama's team was just better than everybody else, Georgia was just better than everybody else, that's what Lane Kiffin was talking about yesterday. What are you doing schematically? How are you making your playmakers better? Coaching. And I'm just saying, for everybody's like, oh, we're better than such and such. Not anymore. If your coach isn't, you're not going to win the amount of games you think you are. That's why the heat's on James Franklin. You talk about around the country, Napier's not winning. I don't care about talent. It looks like coaching is lacking there. Exactly. Exactly right. All right, man, we got to run. Join us at, 2 o'clock today. Dukes and Bell, 92.9 The Game. We'll talk to you guys then.
Peace.